Today we're going to be talking all about dog agility. Things like, what is agility? How can you get into agility? What are some things maybe you should know or train before you get started? And even all about competing in agility and what type of competitions you can do and how you can prepare for it.
Welcome to The Woofy Show, the ultimate dog lover's digest. Meet your hosts, Brian and Magda, two dog lovers ready to help you be the best dog parent, unravel the mysteries of canine behavior, and keep you updated on the latest trends in the dog world. This podcast has something for everyone. Get ready for heartwarming stories, expert advice, and a lot of laughs.
We are joined by agility expert and agility trainer, Olivia. So welcome to the show, Olivia. Do you want to start off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself, your background, how many dogs you have, just all about you?
My name's Olivia. I am a professional dog trainer. I'm certified through Karen Pryor Academy, as well as the Certification Council of Professional Dog Trainer. I am also a certified trick dog instructor. That was my COVID project.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And then currently I have 3 dogs. I have a 13-year-old beagle. I have a 3-year-old border collie. And then my youngest is a 1-year-old beagle.
Oh, okay. So big gap between the oldest and the middle one, I guess.
And then I was crazy and I got 2 very young dogs.
Oh, yes.
Very close together.
We might be doing that. And I know what you mean. It's probably a bad idea, but we just recently saw a dog that's waiting to be adopted, another toller, and we really want it, but I know it's too soon. So we hope we get denied, to be honest. So then that like gives us our
takes away the temptation.
So what kind of stuff? So obviously tricks as well. What type of things do you train or do like work with dogs?
So mostly I do agility.
Yep.
But I also do some puppy consulting as well as some adolescent dog help, a lot of like leash frustration, high arousal type stuff, which I got into mostly because I do agility, and that's a big thing in that sport. A lot of dogs struggling with arousal regulation. Yeah. And I do scent detection.
Okay. Yeah. So one that's really high energy and one that's a bit more chill, I think, so that's a good spectrum though. And then you kind of know what to work with. So for, I guess, the listeners that don't know what agility is, because we didn't know what agility was before we got our dog. Can you kind of describe a little bit of what's involved? Like what the dog sport agility is?
Do you want the long answer or the short answer?
Let's do the long answer. It's a podcast, not a short form YouTube.
So agility is a dog sport that was developed quite a long time ago. It's been running for a few decades now. But essentially the dog is navigating obstacles. Yeah. So a variety of obstacles in some kind of course type format. Okay. Not all of them are labeled 1 through 20. Yeah. But navigating an obstacle course with a handler. Okay. Essentially. Okay. So running, jumping, climbing, going through stuff. Yeah. All of those things. That's
the long answer? That was pretty short, to be honest.
But there's a lot more to it, right? Yeah. So agility is a lot of things woven together. So it sounds quite simple when you look at it on the surface, but there's things like your dog needs to understand how to engage with reinforcement, right? Yep. So if you want to use a tug reinforcer, the dog needs to understand how to engage with that. Yep. Or if you're using food, they need to reliably engage with food. Your dog needs to be socialized to trial environments or class environments because they're quite high arousal. There's a lot of dogs. There's dogs running. There's dogs doing your dog's hopefully favorite thing in the entire world, which is running agility if you're playing agility. And then things like understanding all the different ways to take a jump. Can they do a front side, a back side, do a slice, do a wing wrap, what direction they're going? And
see, these are things I didn't know were things until you start like doing classes or training or whatever. You're like, oh, it's not just jump over it straight ahead. It's like, no, go around to the back of the jump and then jump over it.
Yes, and understanding equipment in various scenarios and various sequences, because your approaches aren't always the same. Yeah. Right. Sometimes you're coming off the dog walk to a jump. Sometimes you're going to a tunnel. Sometimes you're going to the weave poles, right? Like agility is a lot of things, a lot of individual parts that end up woven together, and being able to navigate that the other big thing with agility, especially when you're trialing, is you don't know the courses until the morning of.
Yes.
So you don't know what you're going to be running.
Yeah.
You don't know what the course is going to be looking like. You show up, you get a course map, you make a plan, you have to walk it, and you get one try.
Oh, is it? See, we haven't competed yet. It's just one try.
I guess,
yeah, with other sports, you have like a warm up sometimes or whatever. Yeah. Wow, one try. Man, it seems like a big day. And I mean, I know what happens, and sometimes the dog is just not in the mood that day.
It's
so
true.
that's crazy.
Happen.
So like, what are some benefits of doing like agility with your dog for the dog and the handler and the human, I guess?
Absolutely. A lot of the benefits that I see, the obvious ones are physical and mental stimulation for the dog.
And the human.
There's a lot of running involved and turning and spinning.
I did not realize how hard it is.
It can be quite physically demanding. Yeah. Obviously, there are a lot of handlers that are maybe not super strong runners and training the dog to run and work more at a distance, right? I've seen people trial, even at things like regional competitions. A lady walks out with a leg brace and can hardly walk, and she walks into the middle of the room and she's directing the dog around the course, and it's doing all of the stuff and she's hardly moving at all, or she's walking, right? So
I've seen that. That's crazy.
Even if you aren't physically super able to run around, you can still play if you have the training skill and you have a dog that's suited to work like that. But yeah, physical exercise, mental exercise, I think it's really, you really get to know your dog.
Yes.
Right? You get to know how they learn, what they like, what they don't like, where their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what motivates them. That's a big one. And you are developing that connection with your dog. You're learning how to communicate with them better. You're learning how to listen to them better, right? Like a lot of times we're thinking about, when we're communicating with dogs, how we're communicating to them. And a lot of people miss, what is my dog telling me?
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So lots of benefits to that relationship. Mm-hmm. And you get to make friends.
Yeah,
right?
That's true.
Like you get to meet like-minded people that are also a little bit dog obsessed. You go to trials together, you take classes together, you can find some community. And because they're all dog people, your dog can also make some friends.
Well, yeah, and it's interest. It's not just like dog people. It's dog people that do the same thing and have the same kind of things that are important to them, not just like someone who has like the toy dog that just sits and lazes around a couch. It's
Absolutely.
Like, I want my dog to succeed. Or I just want to go back quickly about the communication. I've never heard about that. So do you have like an example about when, how you said like the dog will kind of learn to communicate with you?
Yeah.
Through specifically with agility. Like I'm more curious of like, because maybe it's happened for me and Maple, I just haven't noticed it. So.
For sure. So a lot of times when I see it is when a dog maybe isn't necessarily as comfortable with a skill as we think they are.
Okay.
So often a couple of things will happen. Either the dog will run off to sniff, which a lot of people interpret as, they're distracted.
Yeah.
I find it's mostly displacement sniffing.
Oh, okay.
So it's usually either they got something wrong and we're resetting and they feel kind of conflicted about that. Yeah. So they're trying to disengage.
Oh, because they didn't get to like finish what they wanted to do. Yeah.
Like the dog runs around a jump and then you're like, no, try that again. And the dog can kind of get deflated.
Yeah.
So sometimes they'll run off and sniff there. Yeah. Another big thing that I see is they'll go take the equipment that they are very comfortable with and they really understand and will pay them. So we see that a lot with, they'll just go take a tunnel.
Well, we find that too with training, because a lot of it is like the contacts or like the A-frame or the dog walk, because you reward them at the end so they don't fly off of it. And we notice that with Maple, she would always go right for that A-frame every single time, because that's what it says. It's like, go back, reward them over a jump, reward them over a thing. Yeah, so I do get that. And then it's like, and as a handler, I guess you get frustrated, but it's like, it's not it's not their fault. That's where they know the treat is. So that's why they want to go there, you know?
Yeah. That's
so I get that part. So then it's like, okay, yeah, they're telling me that, hey, I want to be rewarded, so I'm going to go over there. So I get it.
Or the big thing that I see is dogs running around jumps, or maybe they don't jumps are so overlooked in agility. People are like, oh, it's a jump, but jumps are the thing that your dog's going to do the most.
Yeah.
It's the thing that we should actually be reinforcing the most and practicing the most. And there's like 10 different ways to take a jump.
Well, and it's true. And a lot of dogs, I know when you're right, when it's overlooked, and a lot of handlers will, oh, the dog's just doing a jump. I don't need to be anywhere near it before you work on distance work. So the dog ends up still going towards the handler, not towards the jump, because you're right. People just think that was done in lesson 1. They're fine. So that's so true. Now that you say that, and from like, you know, doing classes and even doing it with Maple, sometimes she'll skip the jump because I'm closer or to the next obstacle. So although I'm like, she doesn't want to go all the way around to hit the jump to then go to the A-frame or whatever. So that's so true. Yeah.
So learning kind of what they feel proficient in.
Yeah.
Another big thing is we use a lot of shaping in agility. And I think with shaping, just the nature of it, you're breaking behaviors down into small skills. You're trying to get the dog to offer you behavior. You kind of really connect with how they learn and what they're thinking. And you start to really get to know them and how they problem solve through things. But also, like, in agility, something we might notice from our dog's behavior is maybe they're knocking more bars than normal.
Okay.
They might be in pain.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe they don't want to turn a certain way. Maybe something is hurting. Maybe we need to schedule a visit for some body work or chiro or physio or whatever. So you do kind of get to know them. And then the other thing that I notice a lot, and I'm always keeping track of, is as a coach, I need to know what the dog can handle and when they're ready to move on.
That's so true. And I guess if you're teaching more than one dog at a time, you have to teach them individually as well if that happens, because one dog is ready to move on or hit that harder obstacle, but this other dog is not.
It's not quite there yet, right? Like, things that I look for are, can the dog, especially young dogs when I'm first starting out, can the dog engage with reinforcement reliably? Do they want to get that reinforcement? Do they want to work? Are they ready for it? Right? I really don't like begging my dog to work for me. Right? I don't want to go to the start line and be like, please do this. Please, come on. Yeah. I have this thing. Let's go.
But you see that. I see that in classes we do. And it's like, you can just tell the dog's just not, like, you shouldn't really be here. And I think a lot of, like, handlers do it because they want to. Yeah. Instead of, like, the dog. I'm not saying never, but just that day, they're just like, this dog's not.
They're not into it right now. And whenever I'm encountering that, the first thing I ask is, well, why?
Yeah.
Why don't you feel like doing this? Have I not made this fun for you?
That's true.
Right? Have I not set you up to be successful in this? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling demotivated? In agility, our reinforcement is sort of woven into the act of doing agility.
Yes.
Right? It's not this, I do something and then I get reinforced, right? It's I'm running and jumping and moving
like
my body,
doing those jumps, doing that tunnel, doing that A-frame. That's the fun part. Yeah,
it should be fun for the dog. And if my dog is walking up to the start line and they're going, ooh, I don't really know, I need to be asking myself, why is my dog not having fun? And how can I make this fun for them? And I had a dog like that where I would walk up to the start line and she would run away.
Oh, wow.
Right? And she would go sniff, and she was a beagle.
Yeah.
And she, a lot of times I was told, like, oh, she's a beagle. She's just distracted. She's just sniffing.
Yeah.
And really, it was that we had been moving up through levels, and all of a sudden, instead of agility being fun, it was really hard all the time.
And I guess if you move too fast, too, and that's the thing, and I know a lot of places that do classes, they won't let you move to the next level if they don't think your dog's ready, which is good. They're not like, well, you just want money, just keep going, whatever. You know, so that's so true that just like with anything, whether it's tricks or whatever, if you're trying to do something too complicated, Dogs get frustrated. Yeah, they get frustrated.
It's not fun to be frustrated.
No.
Right? And it's important that the dog is having fun. Otherwise, they're not going to do it.
Yeah.
They just won't, right? So we need to keep that in mind. And if I'm having a dog where they are disengaging, they are doing those displacement behaviors, I need to evaluate that and say, how can I make sure that this is fun for you? What kind of equipment setups can I do that make you feel like agility is really awesome?
Yeah.
I really like using play as reinforcement in agility because I want dogs to have play feelings when they're playing agility, right? I want them to feel like we're running and we're playing and we're chasing and we're doing all of this stuff. And I use food as well, but I want my dogs to be able to reliably have fun with me and then bring that into the sport.
Yeah.
Right? And I weave them together. So we start with like play tug, and getting that tug drive. And then with my young dogs, it's, can you tug in this empty park? Can you tug in this parking lot?
Yeah.
Can you tug in all of these different places? Can you engage in this game that we're playing? Or flirt pole or fetch or whatever. Can you engage and play with me in a variety of different places around a variety of different things? And then can you do a wing wrap for a tug? Mm-hmm. And now that's part of our tug game.
Yeah.
So it's not... you do the work and then the tug is the reward. It's doing the wing wrap is part of the game.
Yeah.
Right? And it's part of the fun. And that stuff all takes a lot of time to develop, right? And it can be hard to put in that time. And not everybody has to be putting in that time.
Of course.
But it does definitely help build that connection with the dog, build that ability to reliably have something that your dog is opting into. Yeah. Yes, I want to play the game. I want to do the wing wrap tug game, right? Or I want to do the tunnel throw the ball game, right? And I want to do those things. So we're creating a dog that when they walk out, they're like, what else would I want to do?
Yeah. Well,
Obviously,
exactly.
I want to do this.
Yeah. I mean, we're lucky with Maple. She likes to climb things. So anytime there's stairs when we go for a walk, she just wants to go up them. And so that's anything that involves going up. She's like, I just want to go up.
Yeah.
I don't want to go down. I just want to, well, no, she's not that bad. But so I guess on the topic of the dogs and the skills you teach them, are there any qualities that would make a good agility dog, like a dog, what type of qualities in a dog would kind of make the owner being like, hey, maybe I should check out agility because my dog likes these kind of things. And then I guess on top of that, which there probably is an answer, are there any specific dog breeds that are suited at that sport?
Absolutely. I am a real big believer that anybody and any dog can play some form of agility and have fun with it. But things that I would look for are dogs that really like to play.
Yes.
Dogs that really like to run. And dogs that really like to move their bodies.
Okay, yeah.
Right? Yeah. So they like jumping, they like running, they like doing all of those things, are probably going to find agility more intrinsically reinforcing naturally than a dog that maybe just wants to sit on your couch or go for a leisurely stroll or any of that. And I think you can still do agility with those dogs and you can still have fun with it, but it might look different.
But I guess that's up to the handler too. If you don't want to be that person that wants to go and run with your dog and play with your dog, then don't expect your dog to do agility.
Absolutely. For sure. As far as breeds go, I started agility in beagles because I'm crazy, I think.
I've never seen a beagle do agility. So you're a great example that it doesn't have to be a sport dog or whatever.
Right. And if you know anything about beagles, they're notoriously kind of difficult, right? Like they don't really love to listen. They like to do their own thing. They're very sniffy.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that, they're a hunting breed that's meant to chase and pursue and run through the woods, right? So they are quite athletic. And if you can figure out how to harness that and attach it to the sport, you can have quite a bit of success. Yeah. The other thing with beagles is they are quite food motivated. Yep. So they do like food quite a bit. With my youngest beagle, I did a lot of flirt pole, because it recreated that chasing prey for him. Okay. So we would do a tunnel and then chase the flirt pole. And then all of a sudden
what is a flirt pole?
Oh,
to be honest, I mean, I don't even think I know what it is, but unless I do, I just didn't know what it was called.
Good question. So a flirt pole is essentially a cat toy for dogs. It's like a big cat wand.
Oh, okay.
So it's a long stick with string with some sort of toy on the end.
Oh, okay.
Usually those dogs that are really hesitant to tug, but maybe they really have prey drive and they like to chase, I'll usually start them with a flirt pole.
That's such a great idea.
Because then you can sort of fling it around like you would a cat wand, and it can really tap into the dog's prey drive, right? They really want to chase and catch it. And then you can develop, okay, you're chasing and then you put your mouth on it and we're going to tug gently and then you can win it, right? So developing all those kind of play patterns and routines into my dog is having fun. They're doing something that makes sense to them, right? It taps into that natural instinct within them. And then we're attaching it to equipment or the sport or any of that, right? So that's how I like to train it.
Okay. No, that's fine. I just didn't know because obviously we didn't have to do that and I haven't seen that before. That's why I didn't know. So,
and it's an example of sort of thinking outside of the box and understanding your dog's strengths. Yeah. Right. And when you are able to do that, that's when we really see a lot of success. Yeah. Right. Because it's not, I also have a border collie. It's not the same. It just isn't, right? It didn't take a lot of convincing to convince her to play the game with you and me. When I got her, she was about 5 months old and would not tug. All. Her teeth were falling out. She had never tugged before. She was not super into it. Yeah. I built it up really slowly with her. We played some really simple tug games where she's winning. My favorite is, I call it 2-toy tug. So that's where you have two similar or the same toys. Yes. The dog grabs one, and then for her, as soon as she put her mouth on it, I would wiggle the next one for her. So
no, I've learned that with like disc, how to get them to like switch kind of.
And it's this, the dog is winning, right? Yes. It's really hard early on if the dog isn't being successful, they can quickly become demotivated and then they don't want to play. Yeah. Right. So as if we're doing a lot of drop it really early with the tug, the dog can have some conflicting feelings about that. Yeah. Then maybe we don't want to let go of the toy. Yeah. And maybe we don't want to play with the toy at all anymore. Yeah. Right. Because I don't know how I feel about that drop thing. So I usually start with, you put your mouth on it, you win that toy, you've won it. Yeah. You're such a cool dog. You won that toy. Look at you go. Amazing. And here's another one. Yeah. Right? So not only are they winning the toy, but they also get to keep playing. Yeah. Right? The play is not stopping for them. Yeah. And then again, I look for milestones in my dog and I look for, when are you ready to move on? Yeah. When I have a dog that's like, this is the best in the whole world. I'm so excited about it. Maybe now we start doing some drop it and we start doing some impulse control with our tug and start introducing that. Yeah. That was maybe a week with my border collie. It was probably 8 months with my beagle. Yeah. Right. That's crazy.
But it's so true. I mean, I call it cheating. I'm sorry. People that have, we're the same with a Toller. People have border collies and Aussies and Tollers. Yeah. It's shortcuts. It's cheating in the sense of the dog will get it quite easy, but you constantly have to work just in general so they don't get too crazy. So it's like cheating as in the dog will learn fast, but then you can't just stop. And I notice that in classes, when we've done agility classes, there's like one dog, they were on like their third round of that level and she just flew through it. Yep. And it was just, and it's like, well, that's not fair. I'm like, yeah, but try to calm her down. She's the one going crazy waiting her turn. Your dog isn't making a sound. Yes. So yeah, she's getting this. But I have other problems to be worrying about. So I guess that's so true that it might take longer for certain dogs and not to like discourage like the handler or the owners of just takes time.
Right. And you can see things in the dog that tell you you're ready. Yeah. Right. You're ready for the next step on this. Yeah. I see it a lot in developing play skills. I see it a lot in agility. Right. Yeah. a thing that I think about a lot is when the dog goes from looking at you for where are you telling me to go to, okay, I've heard where you've told me to go. I'm locked in, I'm going and I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Right. And you can see it. And if you watch my videos from when my dogs are young, you'll see them kind of check in with me. I have to support them a little bit more versus now they're starting to really understand the game. They're starting to have a lot of value in equipment and they're able to look for it, lock into it and just go do it.
Well, it's so true. With Maple, I have to be like 3 obstacles ahead of her to keep up. Otherwise, she's like, I can't. And you know, like you said, some dogs at the start line, they'll just wander off and sniff. For Maple, it's like to get her to not move at the start line is the hard part. And it's like, I have to walk backwards, staring at her, like eye contact. Because as soon as I like turn, I mean, we're still learning and her impulse control. But you're right. Some dogs are just like, I'm ready. I see these 3 things in front of me.
I'm ready to go.
As long as we're not throwing you, hit these 2 jumps, but ignore that tunnel and you're going to come back that way. But like that's
more advanced.
Yeah, of course. So on the topic of how you've been training your dogs, like the play and the tug, are there any like other kind of basic training techniques a dog owner can like start? Or like for someone that wants to get into agility, what are some things they can train at home before they start going to classes? Or
Absolutely. I think being able to engage with reinforcers in a variety of places is probably the number one.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So no matter where you are, the dog's coming out and they're like, okay, I'm ready to do the thing. I'm ready to play with the toy. I'm ready to take the food, whatever. Doesn't matter what's going on. And that's a socialization thing.
Yes.
So a lot of people hold off on agility, right? Because it is higher impact.
Yeah.
And they maybe get a puppy and they say, well, I want to do agility, but later. And then they don't really do anything
leading up to that point.
Leading up to that.
Okay.
You can do so much socialization.
Yeah.
Right? Different places, engaging with the reinforcers that you want to use. Talk to agility coaches, right? You can usually do pre-agility classes.
Yeah, pretty early.
Young puppies. Yeah. Just to get them in the environment, get them used to being there around the other dogs, taking reinforcers. That's number one. Before you're ready to do agility, you have to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, your dog's just going to run off as soon as they're off leash.
Yes. Well, no, that's so true. It's like, and that was something that we were worried about. Well, it was with flyball, not agility. But as soon as you would open that thing, she would just run. Because she's like, I'm free. I want to run around.
Getting your dog comfortable in a kennel. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to go to class.
Yeah.
And especially if you want to trial.
So from our experience, I'm going to say how important this is. This is something that she is comfortable in a kennel at home, in the quiet, nothing's going on. But you're right. It's something that we are now struggling with is just the overexcitement, just like how I want to be out there running. There's other dogs playing. I don't want to see the other dogs. I just want to have my turn.
Yes.
And that's very important because we get the looks when we do classes. Like, why is your dog so loud? But she's also a toller and that they're known for screaming. That's part of their breed standard. But no, she loves it. But you are right. I think that's a very important one that's people don't think about. They're like, I got to get my dog to jump over things and all of that. It's like, no, get your dog to learn to
get a
relax.
Collapsible crate.
Yeah.
Bring it places with you. Practice having a snuffle mat or a lick mat or some kind of chew in a kennel with other stuff going on around them.
Yeah.
That's so valuable.
It is.
Not just in a class, but if you are trialing, they have to sit in a kennel for all day between their turns. And if they're not relaxing between their turns and they're not able to rest, the performance is going to suffer. The other things that I think about are like teach your dog like maybe 5 simple behaviors that they know.
Okay.
And they can do pretty consistently. They don't have to be anything fancy. It can be like sit down, stand,
like the
touch,
basic obedience
spin,
stuff,
right? Like a couple of little behaviors. Because once you can get that engagement with reinforcement in those other places, now you're going to ask for, can you work for reinforcement in those places? Can you take direction for reinforcement in those different places? It doesn't have to be agility related, but it's, can you listen to something that I'm asking you to do? And then we can weave those things into our game or getting food or into those patterns.
Do you think it's better for a dog to have done like other classes, like whether it's obedience classes or, you know what I mean? Like in a class environment with other dogs, or are they okay to be and depending on the owner, but taught everything at home, and then agility is their very first class environment.
I think it does help.
Okay.
Unless you can recreate it.
Yeah, because that's the thing that we've done tons of classes with Maple, and we've learned that's helped in the sense of she's used to like, and she knows when we're in a class environment, she's like, all right, I'm ready to work. I'm ready to play. I'm ready to have fun. This is what we're here for. And I think that's why she loves it so much.
Yep. So I do think it is helpful. I do agility, which means I have friends that do agility, and that means we can go rent together. There are other dogs working, and I can bring my puppy. Yes. And maybe we can do 5 seconds.
Well, they do that with other sports too. They'll let you bring like the puppy out for a little bit and just hold the puppy while the other dogs are running around and doing things so they can.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of that stuff with my young dogs. The other thing, especially if you don't have any equipment, is I would teach a decent stay, right?
Yes.
And you can bring that into your toy games as well, right? Can you hold the sit while I present a tug and then wait for me to say, get it?
Yeah.
Can you hold the sit while I walk away and then come back and maybe we tug or I give you a cookie or maybe I call you out of the stay and you tug. That's helpful as well. Probably the other easiest agility related stuff you can do is body awareness and conditioning. So putting your feet up on stuff, turning, moving your back feet on a pot or a rubber bowl, stepping over things, walking through a ladder, doing cavalettis. All of that kind of stuff.
Like conditioning kind of work.
Right. Agility is a sport. Yeah. The dogs are moving very fast.
To be honest, as the handler, you should be doing all this as well because you'll do your first run and you'll be exhausted. I mean, I did. I needed to like lie down.
Oh yeah, we get together and we practice sprinting without the dogs.
Oh, I know. I've never felt like I've had to do cardio in a long time, but yeah, it's so true.
So that's all stuff you can kind of do outside of class.
Yep.
That will help when you eventually do get to class. I would say keeping the dog in shape and keeping yourself in shape is overlooked. Yeah. But that's also how we prevent injury.
Yes.
Right? Because if we're not in shape and then the dog's jumping and landing and doing this high intensity thing once a week.
Yeah, and they're just lazing around the other 6 days of the week. Yeah.
Then that's how we pull a muscle or we tear something or something gets out of place, right? And that stuff can still happen even in a well-conditioned dog. But having a dog that is well-conditioned greatly reduces injury risk.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we'll move a little bit more on to, like, I guess, competition. So for people that are, like, learning and they want to think about competing, kind of, or just doing it at a bit higher level, what are some like challenges like a handler would face when it comes to like competing with their dogs? I know you mentioned at the start you don't even know what the course is, so that's you got to be able to figure it out pretty quickly.
Yes, and hopefully you have good friends that trial with you, and you can sit there and look at your course maps and go, oh, what do you think about this, right? Or you have a coach that's actively trialing that maybe you're taking classes with, and you can ask them, right? The community generally is, from my experience, it's not always like this, but from my experience, quite helpful.
Okay, I was going to ask that because some communities aren't as much because the dog world can be a bit toxic sometimes.
It can be hard.
But I know this dog sport world because, like you said, everyone has similar interests. So it's like we all want to have fun together.
Yes. You should be able to find at least one person that would be willing to help you. Yeah. But probably the biggest struggle, especially going from a class to trialing, there's quite a few differences. Yeah. You're not allowed any reinforcement in the ring, so you can't have food or toys on you. Yeah. So you need to be prepared for that. Yes. You need to feel confident that your dog can run a course and get rewarded after they come out of the ring. Okay. So that's something you should be prepared for.
Oh, not like just right when it's done. Yes, right. What you do in classes.
Right? Yeah. You need to leash up, get them out of the ring or carry them out of the ring. Yeah. Go back to your kennel, grab your toy, or maybe you have someone standing ringside that has a toy for you or food or whatever. Yeah. But you need to be prepared for that. And can your dog still do it even if that reinforcement is not on your person.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the other reason that I want to make sure that the dog is having fun actually doing agility.
I guess you're right, because then they'll get, like you said, discouraged, because it's like, well, I don't get rewarded after doing this, so I don't want to do it.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Right? So we need to make sure that they are enjoying the act of doing agility, not just I do agility and then I get my food.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, it's going to fall apart in a trial.
Okay.
The other big thing is that shocks people is the spacing between obstacles. In Calgary, a lot of our agility facilities indoors are quite small. They're not regulation ring size.
Yeah.
Usually for agility competitions, the ring is at least 100 by 100 feet.
Wow.
So they're quite large.
Well, yeah, no, I've seen them. You're right.
Yeah.
I've seen them, but I've never been in it. I've just seen it as a spectator. So I guess it's a different world when you're in it with your dog.
And if your dog doesn't understand how to find a tunnel 20 feet away or how to look at lines that are that spread out, they might be less confident, or they might not be able to accomplish that.
Because I think that's more advanced stuff is doing like the distance work. Because right now, at least with Maple, we're not there yet. So I try to keep up with her.
Yeah.
In a small place, it's pretty hard. Yeah. In a big place, I probably couldn't. Well, no, I definitely couldn't keep up with her. So you're right. I guess that's so interesting that they don't realize. Yes. I never thought about that, but that makes sense.
Yes. So I try with my young dogs, especially, even if I'm in a smaller space, to set spacing as if we're in a big space.
Okay.
So even if we're not doing as much, so they get used to finding lines with that much space between equipment.
Yeah.
Because usually like 18 to 20 feet between obstacles.
So instead of having more obstacles, you have less, but the more space.
Yes.
And then mix it. Okay.
Because the dog needs to learn how to find equipment that's that far away.
That's so true, because in some classes, like, they're really close, and they say, they're like, oh, it wouldn't be this tight of a turn normally. They would have a bit more space. And it's like, well, why are we doing this?
Yes, we should be preparing. And when a dog is learning, sometimes tightening those lines up a little bit helps, but we need to make sure that we are teaching them that spacing.
Yeah.
I try really hard to make sure that I'm training in spaces that can accommodate that.
Yeah.
My favorite way to run agility is my dog is running really fast and I am also running really fast.
Well, yeah.
I really like handling like that. And often when I'm in a smaller space, I find I'm relying more on distance because we're back and forth across the room so quickly that there's not really a ton of space.
I like running really fast too. I do see some people in classes and they're like you said, they're barely moving. And I mean, again, they can do it, but it's like, how is your dog supposed to have drive and excitement when you don't have any drive and excitement? I think that's why Maple's so crazy, because she sees like how ready I am to go and do this course, and she's like feeding off of it, which helps. I guess there's a skill for you as the handler. Be excited as well about agility, and it might help the dog.
Yes. So we often say there's only allowed to be one crazy in the ring.
Yeah.
And if it's your dog, it can't be you.
Okay, yeah. That's so true.
So if your dog is crazy, you have to be really level. Otherwise, you're going to spin them out.
Yeah.
If your dog needs a bit of cheerleading, maybe a little bit more energy, they're not the crazy, so you can be the crazy.
Okay, that's so true.
Right?
Yeah.
So with my border collie, I can spin her out really easy, and then it's like her eyes are pure pupil, and she's so amped up, and then she starts not performing as well because she's so highly aroused that she's doing things that she wouldn't normally do.
Oh, okay.
So I have had to learn how to hold back a little bit.
I think that's something I need to learn then. I didn't realize that makes sense though, like the concept of that.
Yeah. My beagles, it's like, let's go! Right?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
And I see that with some people, and I'm like, no wonder everything's so slow. Yes. Like, the dog is in front of you constantly looking back. Like, what do I do next? What do I do next?
And some of that is also the dog's confidence in obstacle performance.
That's true.
Right? So independence on obstacles. The dog, especially running a border collie, it will teach you that you will never be faster than that dog.
Nope.
You need to teach it to do stuff independently.
Yeah.
Right? And most dogs can run faster than humans.
Yes.
Most of them can. So if they are able to lock into that line and just go and even keep that momentum as they move past you forward through it towards a tunnel or the frame or the dog walk or whatever, they're going to overall run faster versus if you're relying on them to run your speed.
Yeah.
Right.
Or like check in with you. Like they got to be able to listen without seeing. Because that's a big thing is like you're yelling out the next obstacle, but they're in front of you.
Oh, yeah.
So they're just listening to what you say.
Yes. I was teaching class and it was at the end and I didn't have any classes after and I was going to train my border collie Zelda after. And I had some students, can we stay and watch you run this course that we just did? And I said, yes, absolutely. And we're running it and she's quite fast. It's very rare that we are under or over 30 seconds when we're running a course. So usually about 17 to 18 obstacle jumpers course, which is just jumps and tunnels, will usually take us about 24, 25 seconds, which is not a lot of time. She's quite a fast dog.
Yeah.
And one thing that stood out to them was like, you're not saying every jump. You're saying tunnel, and she's taking like 3 jumps and going to that tunnel and finding that. And I don't have time to say every single jump.
You're right, yeah.
I have to tell my dog where she is going, and she needs to know that. And if she doesn't know that, way back there's no hope for us.
I guess for the obstacles that are in a straight line, that works. And I think that's what people do. When it's a straight line, the dog will go straight. But when it's not, that's when you have to use like your words to get them to turn around after that. Or when they come out of the tunnel, look for you or something like that. So
we have to give the dogs. So the way that I think about it and what I tell people is I'm not telling the dog the obstacles. Yeah. I am telling them their line.
Okay.
So I'm telling them the line that they are taking, not each individual thing. So I'm telling them, you're going to turn up here because we're going this way next. Yeah. And after we're going this way, you're going to go down this line or drive across to that straight tunnel over there and take the stuff that's in your way, right?
I guess that helps with the competitions and everything spaced out too. You don't have obstacles in the way when they try to jam too much in front. And it's like, we're going to ignore this one that's right next to the one that you want them to do. And it's
we still have those.
Okay, fair enough.
But I'm giving the dog the information that's important for them to figure out where they are going. And as a handler, we're the dog's GPS.
Yes.
And a bad GPS tells you to turn while you should be turning.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You need to know in advance that you need to get off the highway, not as the exit is right there.
Well, I guess it's true. I guess an example from just one of the classes. We're in like level 2 right now. So still a bit to go. But I know one of the parts is like the dog will go through a tunnel towards like the end of the room, but then it's got to come back towards us. And some of the handlers were running to the end of the tunnel. It's like, well, no. Why would you go all the way to the end of the tunnel when the dog has to come back to where you were anyway? Yep. So just stay here and wait for it because they'll come out looking for you for the most part. And so you're right. It's like, because then that's too late because then now you're at the end of the tunnel. So they're like, cool, you're here. I'm going to keep going straight.
Exactly.
So,
right. So we're thinking about maybe I'm sending that to that tunnel, but we're going to go back this direction. Yeah. And you're totally correct. Staying back will give that dog that information. Turning my body a certain way over a jump will say, hey, we're going to be going this way. So be prepared for that. Yeah. If we think about it, the dogs, especially with jumping skills, they have to do so much mental calculus to get themselves over that bar effectively. And they have to do it very quickly.
Yes.
Right? So they need to know how they need to take that jump, where they need to be turning. Do they need to jump long? Do they need to
when do they take off? Yeah.
Right? They need to know that before they are there. Yeah. Right? As they are approaching. Something that I tell all of my students as well is if you hear me yelling out cues, it means you're late. So as I'm watching you run, if I'm yelling tunnel,
if you're yelling as like the trainer for the...
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
for my students, right? Yeah. If I'm yelling tunnel, 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 and you're not yelling it yet, that means you're late, right? Because I have this advantage. When you're handling a dog, you need to focus on handling.
Yes.
Right? When I handle Zelda, sometimes I don't see her the entire run.
Yes.
Right? Me as a coach, I'm on the sidelines and I'm watching and I can see where your dog is, what information they need where, And I can help you get a feel for that.
Yeah.
Right? So if I see your dog needs to drive down this straight line and you're not telling them tunnel yet, they're doing like jump to a tunnel.
Yeah.
I'm going to start tunnel. And then we can get the dog driving up that line better. I can see both of you guys working together. I can see how you're moving, what you need to be doing when to tell your dog. As a handler, you just can't. So I find it really helpful when I'm handling to have somebody be like, oh, you're late in the moment that I'm late. Yeah. So I can get used to that feeling and then I can fix it. Right. Or that feedback of, that was a great turn. You timed that really well. Right. And it might be simpler than that. I usually yell like, or nice or good. Right. I'll yell that stuff out while my students are running. So you can get used to the feeling of like, I timed that correctly. Yeah. This is what it felt like.
I guess, because that's so true. Knowing what you did right, because it doesn't happen in a lot of places. They just know what you did wrong.
Yes.
Do you find as with the handler, like you have to be able to think fast on your feet? Like, there's a certain side of the jump you need to be on or the certain side of the dog. And depending on where the dog is, to be able to just know. Because I know, I guess just a quick example, some people like, well, what is the exact turn I'm supposed to do? Like whether it's like a front cross, rear cross, whatever. And it's like, and that's what they try to do. And I know with me, I don't think about it. It's like, I will just do something depending on the situation. I don't know. And for me personally, I feel like that's a good skill to have where it's just more of a natural thing instead of like, if I don't do it this way, I did it wrong. And it's like, I don't know. I don't think so, but.
Yeah, it's really dependent on the dog, right? So you can have the same course and run it 3 different ways for 3 different dogs, right? If you have a really fast border collie, you might run it differently than if you're running a tiny little Pomeranian.
Yeah,
right?
okay.
And you might choose to handle those differently, depending on what your dog needs from you. Does your dog need to chase you more, or does your
I guess
dog
that's true. Yeah, is the dog behind you, or is the dog in front of you? Like I know if they're behind you, they're going to cross behind you, but if they're in front of you, you're going to cross behind them.
Yes.
And I noticed that at classes, like, oh well, I can't get ahead of my dog, and it's like, well, then don't do it that way. Do it the other way. And I think knowing that there's, like you said, more than one way to run a course.
I do think you have to be able to improvise.
Yeah, okay.
To get back to your
question. That's the word. There we go.
But I think, especially running fast dogs, if you have time to think, you're probably late. So a lot of it needs to be just pretty fluid, a lot of muscle memory.
So you have to know, like that's the thing. They all have to be ingrained in your head of like, this is what, these are the options. This is the one I'm going to use.
Yes. And when you're walking your course, thinking about that. Yeah. When I walk a course, I think about where do I want to be? What do I need to tell my dog? Yeah. What is my dog's line here? Where might it go wrong? Yeah. Right. And that's familiarity with your dog, coming back to that, getting to really know your dog, right? Are they going to be tempted by that tunnel or that frame? Is that going to draw their attention away from where you need them to be? What can you do handling wise to make sure that it's not a problem? Thinking about all of those stuff, I walk, I get a feel for it. I will stand where the dog is likely going to be, and I look at equipment. What is my dog's line? What is the handler line that's going to make the dog line the most effective and most obvious? Yeah. And then I practice running it. Right? I run it without the dog so that my body can feel what it was like to run that. And then when it's time to actually run the dog, I'm not really relying on thinking about what I'm doing because my body has already done it.
I like that. I feel like I'm doing the right things because when we practice lines, I run.
Yeah.
I'll walk it quickly just to understand. And then everyone else just walks it. And I was like, no, I'm going to do it like and everyone else is still just taking their time. And I'm like, no, I'm just going to pretend the dog is not. And then Mabel goes crazy because she sees me running. Well, unless we have the crate covered, depending on the day. But so that's interesting that, you have to. But I guess it's because we want to compete at a high level where some people do it just for fun. But we've been talking about competition.
Fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Right? That's totally fine.
So when it comes to like building a strong like connection so that like your dog can excel at agility? What kind of like approach can like the handler and the dog take to build that connection that they do? Like they don't have to constantly look at you and you have that bond and that connection that you kind of have that trust in them. Like what's some ways that
have a good coach.
I guess so. Yeah. To be perfectly honest, agility you cannot learn on your own off of YouTube videos. You just hard. Can't. You can practice maybe with YouTube videos, but you're right. You can't.
You need that real-time feedback.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how good you are.
Yeah.
I know people on world teams who need that real-time feedback because when you're handling, again, you can't see what's happening. You have to be able to trust the dog skill. In agility, we have learning how to handle and we have training the dog.
Yes.
And those are separate things and they're separate skill sets.
Yeah.
Right? And there are some people that are really good at training people how to handle and maybe less good at being able to train a dog.
Yeah.
And there are people that are really good at training the dog to do the skills, but maybe not the strongest handling coach.
Yeah.
Obviously, we all try to be both,
of course,
for the most part. But those are two very separate skills. What I would do is I do a lot of smaller drills and I do individual obstacle performance and I do a lot of proofing, right? I break the skill down to really small parts and then I build it up gradually and I make sure that my dog can understand, right? The other mistake a lot of people do, especially when they're practicing at home, is they have one piece of equipment and it's constantly, you do one thing and then you get reinforced.
Yeah.
You do one thing, you get reinforced.
Which is what you do like at basic foundation thing, but now you're practicing it. Yeah, that's so true, actually.
Your dog needs to understand how to sequence.
Yep.
Right? So now you do a jump and then you do a tunnel and then you do a jump and then you get reinforced. Or sometimes you do one thing, sometimes you do three things, sometimes you do five things.
Well, it's the same with tricks too. If you just constantly reward them after one trick, they won't ever do the second one until they get reinforced or rewarded or whatever. So.
And the dog needs to have faith.
Yeah.
And they need to trust the reinforcement will happen at some point.
Yes, it will come. Don't be a terrible person and not reward your dog and reinforce them.
It will happen at some point, right? That's like when Zelda gets out of the ring at a competition, she is like, nobody talk to me. I'm going to go get my toy.
Yeah.
Right. And she's just laser focused and she knows. And I ran the agility course and now it's time for me to do my tug.
Yeah.
And she finds the act of doing agility really naturally reinforcing. But she knows it's time for her tug. Yeah. Right. And we struggled when she was young. She would constantly be looking at me for the tug all the time. And she would look forward if I put the tug out on her line. Yeah. But if I was holding it, she was constantly looking at me.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So we really had to work on that. Remote reinforcing is really useful. So doing things like throwing a toy versus having them come over to you.
Same with people when they use like treats and they have them in their hand. It's like obviously the dog is looking at your hand the whole time. Like don't put them in your pocket. You know?
So with a food motivated dog, if I'm teaching them how to find a line, I might use a treat and train. Yeah. Do you know what that is? Do you want me to explain that?
Explain that. I might, but explain it.
Sure. So a treat and train is basically a device that has a remote and it holds food and you press the remote.
Oh, okay. Yeah. The treat comes out. Yeah. Okay. Out.
So that's a great visual for a food motivated dog to look forward and look down that line.
We do that with like treats just in a little bowl.
Yeah.
That's the same kind of thing. Like, so it's like and then it's like if you skip that jump to try to get to the treat faster, you're not getting it, you know?
Absolutely. And a bowl is nice as well because it can visually be there and be predicting reinforcement, but you can also leave it empty. Yeah. And then throw something into it.
Yeah.
The treat and train is also nice because if the dog skips, you don't have to rush over and
try to cover. That's so true. I guess it's easier when you're with like the trainer or the coach. They're there at the end. Or like for us, you know, Magda and I both go to classes, so she'll be at the end.
The treat and train, you can just boop, press the button when you got it right, and off you go. And that really helps the dogs learn to look forward.
And drive forward towards it too, yeah. Oh, we need one of those. Now that I think about it, because we do stuff like that here, but by ourselves, and it's like, you let her go, she goes and then she'll skip something, and it's like, damn it, she just got rewarded, and she shouldn't have, you know.
Yeah. And there's some things, there's different levels of reinforcement as well, right? So when we were contact training, I was really concerned about using a toy with my beagle because he doesn't care if he got it right or not. He'll just go grab the toy and have a great time. Yeah. And I was worried about that. And one of my close friends, who is very wise and gives me very good agility advice all of the time, said, he made an attempt. It's not the worst thing in the world for him to get rewarded for an attempt. He's a beagle.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. You still got to reward them doing it a little bit. Yeah.
But if he gets it right, maybe he grabs that toy, but then you bring out the flirt pole and it's this bigger party, right? Yeah, yeah. So when you do correct performance, you get more reinforcement
of course.
Versus you grab the toy and then nothing exciting happened, right? Or maybe you just got one little piece of kibble. That's not a big deal. But when you do it right, like I throw cheese at you.
Yeah, I think that's what we did for contact is like there was just one treat there. Yeah. But then when she stopped correctly and grabbed it, then we'd like throw some more on a like little target or whatever.
Absolutely, right? So there's different levels of reinforcement as well. I don't worry too much about accidentally reinforcing
Oh, no,
something.
Of course. It happens. It's just like, you win. You got me.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, not like, of course.
Right. And then the other thing that I'm going to think about is if my dog did not do something correctly, how can I set you up to do it correctly the next time? Right. I'm not just going to set you up exactly the same way and expect something different. Why didn't you take that? Is the spacing off? Did it feel awkward for you to jump over that?
Or like even as a handler, are you too far away? That's what I found is I would try to get too far ahead.
Yep.
And then she just wouldn't. She'll skip like the second jump because then she's trying to shortcut to me or whatever. And so then you take a couple steps backwards and you're right. So.
Yeah. So adjusting those circumstances so that next rep, you get it right. And then I can give you a big party. Yeah. I can really reinforce that. Agility is a lot of big things being broken down into small pieces. And knowing how to adjust variables is very, very important in this sport.
Okay, yeah.
Which is also where a good coach comes in, right? Like when I'm teaching dogs to jump, usually I'll do jump grids or smaller drills and start gradually raising that jump height so they can understand how to get over that bar. Yeah. And then when we're sequencing, I keep them low because we're not focused on getting over the bar. We're focused on being able to read a front cross or be able to do those things, right? And then eventually we can combine them together. And I see it a lot. People want to jump their dogs their full height right away. And I hear things like, well, they can jump on the couch or they can jump into the car or they could jump on the bed, right? And it's this high, right?
No,
and they always
it's not
show
the same. Do people say that? I guess I can see people saying that. It's not the same.
It's not the same thing, right? Your dog's not doing that 20 times. Yeah. That's also what we would call destination jumping. So they're jumping onto something. They're not having that landing impact. Yeah. It's not as high intensity.
Of course.
And they're not moving as fast.
No.
Right?
That's so true.
So the mental calculus that the dog has to do to get up onto the couch is not the same as I'm running out of a tunnel and full speed towards this jump and I have to turn and I have to be able to maneuver my body and still keep the bar up all within 2 seconds, right? They have to be able to make those decisions. So until they're really fluent in being able to find equipment and do bigger sequences and they're proficient in jumping higher in sort of smaller sequences for smaller skills, I don't combine them. I keep them separate. And when we do move that jump height up too fast, I will see a lot of dogs run around jumps rather than go over them.
Yeah, because they find it intimidating or something
because they're not confident in getting over it. And they're, ooh.
Well, it's the same as like the dog walk. It starts off low. If you raise it too high, the teeter, same thing. It starts low. Like it's,
and then it's not fun for them, right? And then what happens is they avoid it. And then we go, oh, let's do that again.
Yeah, and then try exact same. And that we found that with other things, or now they're scared of it because they did do it and it was uncomfortable.
And then maybe they run off and they do that displacement sniffing we talked about earlier.
Like, I don't want to do that anymore.
I don't really feel confident doing that, right? So if I see especially a new dog and they're consistently running around the jumps and then going off and sniffing, let's lower their jump height for a little bit and see if we can help them feel more confident doing this and then gradually raise it. I was working with someone and they have a lab, and very, very fun lab. She is like loves life, tons of energy.
Yeah, labs are pretty crazy.
Great dog, love. And we started them really, really low for a long time. And then a couple of weeks ago, they came to class and we forgot to put the jumps back down.
Yeah.
And she ran and she went over them perfectly fine. And we were like, oh my gosh, she's jumping in sequence. But we had put in that work of sequencing with the bars low and raising the jump height in a different context. So she had enough confidence to be like, I can get over that bar confidently. And she did it. It just came together. And when you put that front end work in, it does just come together.
Of course,
like that. And it's really, really amazing, especially my current dogs are quite young, and I've just gone through this, like, okay, we're going from skills to now we're running 22 obstacle sequences. Yeah. And they're just doing it. Yeah. Because we put in all of that.
Well, it's a lot of foundation. Yeah, it's foundational work. Yeah. And not just for the dog, for the handler too, though. So
it does help that this is not my first rodeo.
I guess so, yeah. Well, of course. Yeah. You know what to teach them because that's what you do.
Yes.
Do you have any kind of memorable experience of you competing, like something that was like stood out of agility competition or just anything, I guess, or something that was like really big that they just, I don't know, a cool story, I guess.
Sure. Probably the biggest thing, because regionals is next month. Last year, we competed in my very first regionals and my dog's very first regionals. Zelda was 2, which is quite young.
Yeah.
And the way regionals works is it's 2 days and you run a standard, a jumpers, and a gamble, which are all different games. That's a whole other podcast talking about all those rules.
Yeah, we can do an advanced one in the future.
But you run one of those at each day, and you essentially have a set number of points, and then if you get faults on your runs, you lose points, and you need a certain amount of points to qualify for nationals. It was our first regionals. I wasn't expecting a ton. They were master's level courses, so not starters, not advanced, only master level courses. We were not in masters in regular trialing, but we trained at that level. Yeah. We train a lot of masters/international type stuff. And she placed top 10 in her height division for 3 of her runs. Wow. Out of a lot of dogs. Yeah. She's a 16-inch regular, which is a very competitive class. Yeah. One of her runs, she was the second fastest dog on that course of all dogs. Wow. Which I think, like hundreds of dogs. Yeah. Second fastest. And we actually had enough points to qualify for nationals our first year running regionals. It was a good weekend for us. We had a great time. Yeah. I had no expectations. And it was like, oh, we can do this.
Yeah.
Right?
That's awesome.
And really hard environment. 4 rings running at the same time. People everywhere, dogs everywhere, dogs running in a ring right next to you, being able to focus. I was quite proud of her for being able to do that. And it makes me really excited about where we're going to be able to go.
It's such a good feeling when like you just have when and again, it's not all the time that happens, but when dogs just like get it and it's like, wow, like you are amazing. Like, well, both of you, because I guess you work together, but it's like that thing of like, this is awesome.
Yes.
Like, this is great. Like, we're having so much fun. So,
and that's how you get addicted to the sport, I think.
That happened with us with dock diving. For her height, and just starting, she was jumping the same distance as dogs have been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. And we're like, holy, we love this now because she's just, and I guess it's one of those things. If your dog is good at something, of course you enjoy it more than if your dog's bad at something, but that's a whole other thing. But
yeah, that makes me think about, there's a lot of, well, I just want to do agility for fun. Yeah. And I don't want to compete and I don't want it to be serious. And I think that's fine, but you should still aim to have some level of success.
Yep.
Because success is reinforcing. It's reinforcing for us. It's reinforcing for the dog. You're going to have more fun if you are set up for success.
And you feel like when you pay for all of this training and classes and coaching and trials, it's worth it as well.
Yeah, right? And even if you never compete and you're just doing classes, it is not fun to walk up to the start line and have a dog that doesn't want to play.
Yeah.
That's not fun.
No.
Right? And my 2 priorities with agility always are safety and fun.
Yeah.
We should be as safe as possible, and we should always be having fun.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter what level you want to do it at. And part of that is making sure you're setting your dog up to understand what you're asking of them, so they're not getting frustrated and demotivated, and setting yourself up and your dog up for success. And having a good, competent coach will help you with that if you're new to it. There's a lot of classes where it's like, oh, we're just doing it for fun and we're throwing safety out the window, or we're throwing foundations out the window, and we're just trying to do it as fast as possible and get the dog through the thing. It doesn't matter if they do it well or not. But I've seen a lot of dogs become incredibly demotivated in those situations because they don't really understand what they're doing. They don't feel confident in what they're doing, and a lot of them will disengage.
Yeah.
So I think it is really important, no matter what level of agility you want to be at, you're finding somebody who's thinking about safety and making sure you and your dog are set up for success.
Yeah. Do you feel like people should try to strive for, because obviously it's pretty daunting, like the things like regionals and like masters level stuff. And some people, and I've heard of other organizations, they're a lot more simple. They just do like, all they do is like jumpers and all of that. Do you think people should try to like go a little bit further, like not be afraid to challenge themselves? Because that's something that I've learned. And when I listen to people talk, it's like, oh, this lower level competition is better because they're not as strict and not as perfectionist. And like, but that's what makes it fun, is because it is a little bit harder, and maybe you should try to do that and don't stick with like the easier things. What are your thoughts on?
I think there's merit to all of it, and I think different organizations are going to suit different teams differently, right? I mostly trial in AAC, and I am getting more into UKI, but there's also CKC, which is the Canadian Kennel Club, and then NADAC. Yeah. I think all organizations have a lot of merit for different reasons, even though an organization might seem easier. Usually it's challenging in a different way, or usually there's a benefit. Like if I have a dog that's really struggling to get into the ring and they're really environmentally sensitive, I might want to run a simpler course with straighter lines and bigger turns and not a lot of turning, good. Right? So I think there's merit to it all. I think it really depends on who you are as a person, right? I think it's also fine to just stay in classes forever and never compete. The most important thing, again, you're doing it safe, you're having fun, and you're doing something with your dog. Right?
But I think that's probably the most important, is just the different bonding.
You're getting out every week and you're doing an activity,
it's
right?
It's good for you and the dog, the exercise.
Yes. And then all the things to maintain your dog's conditioning that you're doing outside of agility class is also beneficial, right? I am a very competitive person. I like to trial and I like to compete.
Some people aren't competitive. They just want to do it and see how their dog does and maybe get some ribbons or whatever for fun.
Right. And I think trialing can be fun if you find it fun.
Yes.
Right. It's important, especially because I work with a wide range of people and I see a wide range of people, that even if you don't have plans to trial, my criteria for performance is going to be the same. Because that's how to do it safely. Exactly. Right. And it might look different for every team, and find their strengths and sort of make up for any weaknesses and figure out that big puzzle, which is why I really like the sport so much. And also why I don't just run one type of dog. I really like being able to sort of have dogs that are very different, opposite ends.
Well, you like, you're probably someone that likes the challenge.
I do like the challenge, right? Yeah. And it's different challenges.
Yeah.
Right? Running the Border Collie is hard. Running the Beagle is hard.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's easier in some ways.
Yeah.
And it's harder in other ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like the Border Collie needs a lot more skills and independence and understanding. And I don't have a lot of time to fix anything. But she's not environmentally sensitive. She's going to come out ready to work. She's going to be ready to do it. Nothing else she would rather be doing. The Beagle, maybe he doesn't need as much skills because I can be there easier to help sort of guide him, but really environmentally sensitive. That's a whole different training challenge. So I think if you enjoy being competitive, and you enjoy trialing, you should trial.
Yeah.
I think everyone should aim to do agility as safely as they can.
Of course.
And following regulation. And some dogs are going to be more demotivated on a harder course.
Yeah.
So if you have one of those dogs that turning is demotivating for them, it slows them down, maybe they're not super comfortable doing it, my first question would be, how do we make them feel more comfortable? Yeah. But somebody else might just say, well, maybe run courses in an organization that's more suited.
Or this is not for them or something like that, yeah.
I very rarely say agility is not for
Well,
somebody.
yeah, I know. But I'm just, that's what they would think. Sorry, like as the handler or the dog owner. Yeah. It's like, oh, maybe this is not for us.
Maybe this isn't the thing. And I try to have enough flexibility within the sport of how do we make the dog fall in love with it?
Yeah.
Right? Which we've talked about a lot.
Yeah.
But
yeah. So I guess last question, last one, before we wrap up. Are there, from your experience, are there any like misconceptions people see about dog agility? I assume one of them is like any dog can do it, but is there anything like else that you want to clear that people think that's, you know?
I think a lot of people think that it's easier than it is.
I thought that. Yeah, so did my wife, which is why Magda, she thought that's why I do it, because she's like, this is way more complicated than I thought it was. So I cannot comprehend all of these things to do at the same time. So you're right on that one.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will watch a video or they'll see something and they won't realize how much work went into that product. It's not something that you just sort of start doing and you're automatically fantastic at it. It takes a lot of work as a handler. There's a lot of self-growth that you have to do, as well as training the dog. Yeah. So that's a big one. There's a lot of... This kind of goes either way. People either think agility is like really super dangerous, or they think it's like not dangerous enough or at all, right? Or they think there's no risk.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Years ago at a facility I used to work at, the puppy class had to walk through the agility room.
Yeah.
And so many times people would try to take their little 10-week puppy over a full-size dog walk.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like,
no.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right? So,
because they don't know better and they'll jump off of that. And it might not be that high, but for them,
it's very high, right?
It is, yeah.
So there is risk.
Yeah.
We need to be respectful of that. But there's also the camp of people that are like, your dog's going to fall apart or they're going to break their legs or don't do it at all. So it can kind of go either way on that one. Like anything, it's risk assessment. Yeah. And it is really an answer of it depends.
Well, yeah. Well, it's like any sport for any person or animal or whatever. It's just, you know.
So some people think it's so dangerous. I would never do that. There's also, I've run into some people that like think we force them to do this.
I think that's becoming a lot more of a popular thing, like the whole force-free training, which is obviously a great training method. But yeah, they think anything that you're making your dog do something, they don't want to do it. It's like, yeah, but they do want to do it.
I will tell you right now, if your dog doesn't want to run agility,
they're
not going to run
So
agility.
you're right with that, because we found that when we do sports, and it's like, why would you put your dog through that torture or that, like, and it's like, because she loves it. Like, are you kidding me?
Ask her if she thinks it's torture.
So I like that. That's a very valid point, that you're right. It's not, and I don't think people, maybe there's terrible people out there that force their dogs, but they wouldn't, because the dog wouldn't enjoy it, which means they wouldn't enjoy it.
And then as soon as you get in the trial, your dog has to run. They can now run in a flat collar.
Yeah.
With nothing hanging from it, but it used to be they can't run with any equipment on them.
Oh, okay.
They have to be totally naked. And it's like, your dog's off leash, totally naked. You have no reinforcement on you. If they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. Right? So, no, we don't force dogs to do this. Sometimes we have to be the responsible one and say, like, you've had enough, because they don't want to stop doing it.
Yeah.
But we don't force them to do it.
Which is hard. Yes. It's hard. It's like, you're having so much fun and you want to go, but you're not listening anymore. You're getting too aroused. So it's like,
you're starting to get a little dangerous.
Let's go out, go for a walk. Yeah, and I know. And that happens too. I know with some of the, like you said, knowing the dog and the dog walk. If you think your dog's going to jump off that dog walk, then, like, let's start slow.
Yes.
And
accidents definitely do happen in the sport. I think there is some people think, like, you have to invest a ton of money all the time, and it is not cheap.
No,
it is not.
Well, like, it's not cheap because it takes a long time. I think that's the point. It's not a 1 6-week class.
Yes, it takes a long time.
Dozens.
Lots of classes. Traveling for trials and all of that. But, like, you don't have to be driving a Mercedes or have, like, the most money in the world to do some agility.
That's priority. What's your priority?
Right.
It's no different than you get a son playing hockey.
Yes.
Or, dance classes and ballet with all the shoes and the dress. It's the same thing.
And it is a hobby.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
So it is, like, budgeted into your entertainment budget.
Yes.
Right? And thinking about that stuff, and yes, it is not always cheap.
No.
But it does not have to be the most expensive thing ever. You don't have to go out and buy a Gallican dog walk to put in your backyard. You can find somewhere to use their equipment. There's lots,
There's a lot of, like, drop-in sessions everywhere.
Yeah.
No matter what city you're in, if a facility teaches agility, they probably do drop-in sessions.
Yes.
So,
once you're feeling proficient and you have some good coach guidance too, you can get some homework and you can practice some stuff in your yard.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to enlist somebody that really understands the sport before you do that, so you're not ingraining bad habits. So if stuff goes weird, you have somebody to sort of problem solve that with you. But, like, I made my own jumps. I made my own weave pulls. I pack them up in the car. I set them up in a random field. We do some training, and then we pack up and we leave, right? That's not too expensive.
No, that's what we do for flyball. Yeah, we learned all of the basics, and then if there were any problems in your next practice or your next class, you say, hey, we've been doing this at home, but this is happening.
Yeah, and you have that community to fall back on. I'm really big into community training and, like, club style training where people are making friends and getting together and helping each other.
Yeah.
And
that's literally what this podcast is about. It's helping other people in the dog community.
Yes, absolutely. There is also sort of a reputation in dog sports generally that people are really cliquey and mean.
It does exist a little bit, though, but it's a small percentage.
Yes. And it's finding your friends and your
like,
people.
we know that as trainers or coaches, as people competing, and we've noticed it's cliquey but that exists in everything in life, to be perfectly honest. But don't let that ruin it.
Don't let that stop you.
And it does for some people. They get intimidated and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's about finding those.
And if you are feeling that way, but you really want to keep doing the sport, try a different class. Yeah. Try a different community. Try a different section of it. A lot of it is finding people that click with you.
Yep.
I teach classes. I have lots of friends that teach classes that I would really recommend. Some people will really vibe with me and not vibe with somebody else. Some people won't vibe with me, but they'll really vibe with somebody else. I am not the type of person that's going to get offended for that. Also things like, oh, hey, I see you're working this type of dog. One of my friends that also teaches has a lot of experience with the stuff.
I think that's huge, actually. That just in training in general, that definitely helps. Yeah.
Being able to refer to somebody. And it's like, I could probably help you, but I never experienced that personally. This person has. Yeah. They've lived it.
Yeah.
So talk to them, right? Try some stuff with them. I think having a community where, and each coach is going to see something different too, right? I'm going to see something different than somebody else. And maybe if you're really stuck somewhere, there's also a benefit of, well, I'm going to get somebody else's eyes on this.
Yeah. Be open to other opinions. Right? Yeah. But something might make sense for you more than another way, or a dog. It's the same with training. There's more than one way to train your dog at a sit. And it's like, what makes most sense to you and your dog?
Yeah, absolutely. So. And like finding those pieces, you should never feel ashamed of like branching out like that. Yeah. I know some people have, and they want to feel
that's loyal. What the like clickiness, and I think it happens. And there's people that like, I only do these things with this one trainer. And it's like, well, why? You're missing out on so much if you go to this competition or, this group. And it's just like, that's fine, whatever. You want to be that person? Don't drag me into it. But yeah. No, that's awesome. So that's all the questions we have. I guess we'll kind of wrap it up with kind of where can people find out more about you, whether they want to work with you or learn more about the type of things that you can help them with. So
sure. So I post on Instagram on my business page, Inspire Dog Training. I post more on my personal page, which is Olivia_Pasoli on Instagram.
I'll have them all linked below.
Yes.
So it's hard to type out.
Yes. Those are probably where you can find what I'm doing. I post a lot of stuff of my personal dogs doing sports. I post a lot of my runs. I try to make sure that I'm posting things that maybe didn't go perfect too, because nobody's perfect. It's good to see that stuff on social media.
It is.
Sometimes stuff falls apart, and that's okay.
And it's nice knowing that even though you're a professional, you go through that as well.
Oh yeah, all the time, right? So updates on my business are usually on my business Instagram or Facebook page. Yep. And then if you want to follow me and my dogs and what we're up to, and you can follow my personal one on Instagram.
Awesome. You have a website too?
I do have a website, www.inspiredogtraining.ca. I am also currently teaching agility at a facility called Canine Connection Training Center, which is in the northeast.
Here in Calgary.
32nd. Yes. So if you want, I teach Thursday nights, and I do single session classes. Okay. So I run a skills and drills, which is basically working on obstacle performance, basic skills, some basic handling maneuvers, breaking things down. And then I run a coursework class where we're practicing longer sequences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate it. I learned lots. Agility is an awesome sport. You definitely should check it out if you have any sort of active dog.
Yes.
Or not active dog and you want to be more active.
Yes.
But yeah, no, thanks for coming. Is there anything else you want to say or add, I guess, before we wrap up this episode?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Perfect. Awesome. Well, yeah. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We just want to thank Olivia for being here again. Make sure you check out her socials and follow her so you can see kind of the things she's up to and maybe learn a few things you can do with your dog. We hope you learned something. And if you are considering doing agility, I hope this kind of helps push you over that line to do it. If you're already doing agility, let us know in the comments. Have you been competing? What kind of dog are you doing it with? Where are you at in agility? We'd love to learn. As I was talking about on this episode, we're doing agility with Maple. We're still kind of learning, so we have a long way to go, and we're loving it. So definitely check out that sport if you're into any sort of dog sports, anything like that. So yeah, thanks again for watching or listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, depending on where you're watching or listening to this. It really helps us. Same thing, leave us a comment below if you are doing agility with your dog. And that's it for this one. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.